Question: what is the most powerful petrol-powered production SUV on the market? It's not the Ferrari Purosangue, or the Urus, or the DBX 707. Apparently, it's this thing. What you're looking at is the Dodge Durango SRT Hellcat. This unassuming family wagon is based on the standard Durango, but swaps the unassuming 3.6-litre V6 for the monster 6.2-litre V8 Hellcat engine from the Challenger and Charger SRT Hellcat. Except here, it makes even more power, up to 719 PS. Whoa! This thing is a nutcase! So it will do 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, a quarter mile at around 12 seconds, so it's absolutely rapid. And it sounds ridiculous as well, so silly. Honestly, if you love the sound of a supercharger whine, you are gonna love this car. How does that compare with other SUVs? Well, the less powerful DBX 707 and Ferrari Purosangue are both slightly quicker. But the Durango offers serious bang for buck. It will set you back less than 100 grand US, whereas its esteemed British rival will set you back at least double, and in the case of the Ferrari, at least triple. Oh, the acceleration is just violent, man. That's so addictive. But it's not all plain sailing where money is concerned. This car could get quite expensive when it comes to fuel, because I want to do that all day long. Okay, so there's a bunch of different drive modes. Let's be sensible for the moment and whack it into auto, see what it feels like. Yeah, it's quite calm and peaceful, isn't it? I'll tell you what it's like. It's like a big, cuddly, friendly, dumb lunatic. 1 minute, totally placid family car. The next minute, frothing at the mouth. It's ideal for these really straight roads here in the backwoods of California or on a motorway, for example. This is where it excels. But I'll tell you what, you'd have to be a bit of a maniac to take it anywhere with corners. Wouldn't you? Well, I guess I'm an idiot. This is a family SUV, and that is very much a racetrack. I told you before, man, I'm sick. I need help. But also, why would you give a family SUV 719 PS if you didn't want people to take it to a racetrack? So, launch control, foot on the brake, foot on the accelerator, and go. Oh, yes. This thing absolutely shifts. So there's no surprise that it's quick, but what happens when you get to a corner? The heart rate goes up, I tell you, that's what happens. What you gotta remember is that this is a 2.5 ton car, 2.5 tons. A Urus is what, 2.1 tons? The Ferrari Purosangue, 2 tons. So it's significantly heavier than a lot of its rivals, but it's actually surprisingly composed. Dodge have installed what they call a helper spring, which is basically an extra spring inside the damper, which allows it to maintain some level of comfort, but also helps to stiffen it up in the bend. So the body roll, yeah, there is some body roll, but it's actually not as bad as you might imagine. Oh. I'll tell you what, it feels unnaturally fast. I'm sat so high up in this car, and it just doesn't feel right. Tell you what it feels like. It feels like driving a house from upstairs. This is the one you got to be really careful with. Don't be too greedy. Try and get the apex. Don't carry too much speed on the entrance. Fire it out on the exit. Oh, yes. This is a super SUV. The level of stiffness you get in the suspension varies depending on what mode you happen to be in. Right now I'm in track mode, which makes it the stiffest. On the occasions when you encounter a bump on the corners, you can really feel the car kind of bucking and fighting against the laws of physics. But fair play to it, it's actually making a pretty decent fist of tackling these bends. actually pleasantly surprised by the amount of grip there is in this car. It's only using 295 section tyres front and rear, Pirelli P0s, so no special track rubber, but you're able to actually pitch it in with a surprising amount of speed, and it does hold on until towards the exit of the corner when I guess the tyres start to gather a bit of heat and lose a bit of their friction. That's when understeer raises its ugly head, but fair play to it. The numbers on the dash through corners is surprising given the fact that this is a 2.5 ton SUV. 2.5! What is the balance like? Well, understeery if you go too fast into the corners, but it does like to throw shapes. I'm not going to do it deliberately because, like I said, it feels like you're driving a block of flats and things can come at you very quickly when it does start to move around. But fair play to it. It's got a sense of humor. That's the best thing I can say about this car. It's absolutely hilarious. Good old-fashioned American muscle car fun. I do have to mention the brakes because they are a weak point in this car, as you would expect. They're not carbon ceramics, they're steel brakes, and that means when you're driving along very quickly and you require the car to come to a stop, you are putting a lot of heat through those discs, and the pedal can go long and start to lose effectiveness. But if you drive around that weakness, in other words, you don't pound on the brake pedal, you gently slow the car down as you approach a corner, then it's not too bad. I've done a 5 or 6 lap stint so far, and although I can smell brakes, I'm not getting any warning lights and nothing appears to be on fire. So, all positive. We've got to talk about the gearbox. 8-speed automatic with a manual mode, so you can use the paddles behind the steering wheel, but the thing about this particular gearbox is that it feels a little bit slow. In other words, if you're changing up from first, second or third in particular, you need to shift almost before you think the shift point is, because if you don't, it'll hit the limiter and ruin your shift. I'll slow it down and demonstrate for you. So we are now in first gear. I'll accelerate, shift, shift. There's a half a second gap between pulling the paddle and actually getting the gear you want, so you've got to keep your wits about you. When you get it right, it's really satisfying, but there are definitely faster gearboxes out there.
So it performs well, but we do have to remind ourselves that this is a family SUV, so it's worth examining those credentials too. The looks are fairly subdued in comparison to others with this power level, and aside from the Hellcat badging, it doesn't particularly shout about its performance abilities. It's also practical. That beast of an engine means the Durango can tow nearly 4 tons, around 4 tons more than a Purosangue and around half a ton more than a Urus, while it's also a pretty decent bus for ferrying families.
Inside, the Durango is a pretty large and spacious beast. As standard, it comes with 6 seats, so 2x2x2. But if you've got a big family, you can replace that middle row with a bench seat to give you up to 7 seats. In terms of interior quality, it's actually not bad. I mean, it doesn't break any new ground, but everything is fairly solid. I really like this demonic red leather that they've finished it with a contrasting white stitching. You got some leather effect on the top of the dashboard, and if you pay a bit of extra money, you can also get some carbon fiber right here on the trim on the dashboard and on the doors as well. The third row of seats that I mentioned earlier are really big. They're not the tiny seats you get in a lot of 7-seaters, and they're big enough to accommodate even grown adults. Elsewhere, we've got loads of space here for your bits and bobs, a decent sized glove box, another cubby space between the seats in the second row, and in terms of boot space, with all seats up, 500 litres. With the third row folded down, 1,200 litres. With both the second and third row of seats folded flat, 2,400 litres of space. Massive. As for technology, it's pretty decent. You've got a 10-inch display with Apple CarPlay, you've got a 19-speaker Harman Kardon sound system, wireless charger for your phone, all the types of USB flavors you want, including Type C and Type A, and even a 3-pin plug so the kids in the back can plug in their devices. One negative point related to the technology is that this car doesn't appear to have a bird's eye 360 view when you're reversing, so it can be quite tricky as it's a large car. And with the third row of seats folded up, with the headrests up, it's hard to see behind you. But there's a secret button on the screen that lets you fold the rear headrests all the way down to improve visibility or to bop your kids on the head when they're misbehaving. Good feature. Let's keep it 100% real. This is obviously a much better family car than it is a track car, but I do see the massive appeal in having access to 719 PS and having access to all that acceleration and having access to all that noise. It's addictive, it's fun, it's flipping quick. It makes absolutely no sense, but at the same time, it kind of makes all the sense in the world. Is it as good as a Lamborghini Urus or a Ferrari Purosangue or an Aston Martin DBX 707? I don't think it's as dynamically capable as any of those cars, but it's got such a big personality and such a low comparative price tag that I think this actually holds its own against its elite European rivals. It's big, it's brash, it's ballsy, it's loud. And that's ticking a lot of boxes for me. Let's go.